We're about to show you 20 advanced serve strategies to take your serve to the pro level. And don't worry, we're gonna break it down by categories so it's easier to understand.
And make sure you stick around until the end where we show you the mind games that pros are using to win more points. Let's get into it.
For phase one, we're gonna show you how to take your serve from this to this. That's right, we're talking about power. Let's get into tip one.
To generate power, step one is to load low. Most players when they're starting just stand up and serve without ever really considering how low they get. But if you want to hit a more powerful serve, you need to load your weight low to the ground. That way, whenever you drop the ball, you can explode up and through it and hit a really powerful serve. If you think about basketball and you're going to go dunk a ball, you don't jump to dunk like this. You get low and jump so you can be very explosive and generate power.
In addition to loading low, you've also got to be facing your body in the right direction. A lot of players, again, want to serve like this with their chest facing towards the net. But that's actually not the way to get the most power and encourage your follow through. You want to be aiming with your left shoulder towards the target of your destination. So if I want to aim in the middle of the court, I'm going to point my left shoulder towards the middle, load low, and then follow through after I make contact, pass over my left shoulder. If I want to aim to the left side of the court, I'm going to aim my left shoulder farther to the left. And then I'm going to follow through again after I make contact. But the point is, by aiming your left shoulder towards your target, it forces your chest outward, which allows you to rotate and close your hips to add more power.
When you change the direction that your chest is facing, you also need to change the direction that your feet are facing. Several people stand with their feet pointed kind of towards their targets like this, and that's not what you want to do. When you stand with your feet facing your target like this, your hips are naturally open and your chest is also already towards your target. So if you're a righty, you want to put your left shoulder towards your target, put your left foot forward towards your target, and then slightly to the right. And then your right foot can be parallel to the baseline or maybe slightly turned in a bit. This way your hips are closed at the moment before contact, and whenever you drop the ball and serve, you can generate a lot of power by quickly closing your hips. If your feet were not in this position, it'd be really awkward to close your hips, and therefore you cannot generate as much power.
And probably the most important way to actually add miles per hour speed to your serve is to use your body, not your arm. Once again, most players prefer to hit serves just with their arm, and that's part of that chest forward motion. It doesn't allow you to close your hips with force. But my arm only weighs, I don't know, 40 pounds at most. The rest of my body weighs about 180 pounds. So I'd much rather be adding all of that 180 into the force of my serve rather than the arm. So to do that, we got to incorporate the steps that we mentioned earlier. Load low, use your footwork, and close your hips through the ball, allowing you to thrust your body weight when you make contact with the shot.
Now we're out of the power section and into the precision section. Whenever you're practicing your serves, here's a really important thing to keep in mind. You shouldn't just be hitting the ball, but you should be actually thinking about what your steps are after you serve. So in any regular game, you're going to serve and then have to hit what's called the third shot after your serve. So you might as well go ahead and prepare for that in your drilling sessions so that when you're in a game, you can do it automatically. So here's just a quick example. Whenever I'm serving, after I serve, I want to step forward and then take one step back with both feet, get ready, get low. Now I'm ready for the third shot. You don't want to practice like this, where you hit a serve and then just stay here and watch your serve. You're building the wrong muscle memory.
Another really important tip when it comes to serving and improving your consistency has to do with where you make contact with the ball after you drop it. Most people don't realize you actually want to make contact after you drop the ball as high as possible while still making a legal serve. Because the lower you let that ball drop to the ground, now you've got to arc it back over the net and then still get the ball inside of the court. That takes away your chance for power and also reduces some of your margin for consistency. So we want to be hitting the ball at the highest point of contact that still allows us to hit an upward motion rather than a downward motion, which is illegal. And this is going to improve your chances of that serve going in each time and give you more room to add some more power, allowing you to send the ball at a more downward arc than as opposed to down here, where I'm having to lift it upward to still keep that ball inside of the court.
More precision. When you're serving, you want to have a target in mind. So find a very small piece of court, visualize that, and aim for that when you're serving. Whenever you actually think about where you're going to serve, you eliminate so many other variables and inconsistencies, and you're able to turn your vision into reality more reliably. So when you're doing this, you might want to pick a target that is in the center of the court, maybe closer to the back of the court, but always give yourself just a little bit of margin. That way you're not aiming too close to the sidelines.
Another major problem you're probably guilty of, and I am as well, is bringing your head up too soon when you're serving. Your head should be down looking at the ball when you're trying to make contact, but most players decide to look up at their target because they're so excited about where that serve's about to go. The problem is, the moment you lift your head up to look out, you've taken your eye off the ball and you're way less likely to make good contact on the ball. The serve is the starting shot of every point, so you don't want to mess it up. Remove variability by watching the ball all the way through contact. Really also make sure to get to that sweet spot of the paddle right in the middle. That's going to also improve your consistency and give you the maximum power that your paddle can deliver. This is also the only shot in pickleball that you have 100% control of, so don't mess it up by taking your eye off the ball. You've probably heard this serving tip before, but I bet you didn't think of it when it comes to power. Depth in your serve is crucial because it actually keeps the ball moving faster, longer through the court. The moment the ball touches the ground, it loses a ton of pace. So when you're trying to serve with power, you want to hit the back line or as close to it as possible, because when the ball is in the air, it keeps its speed. The moment it touches the ground early, you're going to lose a lot of that power and the effectiveness of your serve is going to diminish. So let me show you what I mean here. Let's say you hit a serve and it comes over the net and it bounces short, even though you hit it with power. The moment the ball bounces off the ground, it loses a ton of pace. So now this ball is moving a lot slower and the person hitting a return has way more time to react because now they're basically hitting a slower serve that moved through the court. But on the other hand, if the serve manages to carry all the way back here, it's only going to begin to lose pace at the baseline and the poor returner is still dealing with a ton of power because it's already at their feet.
I need you to know you're not crazy. Your paddle actually does make a difference on your serve. So here I have two Selkirk paddles. One's a Lux, which is a more control paddle because it's thicker. This is a Selkirk Amp Pro Air. It's a little bit thinner than the Lux, and this is more of a hybrid between power and control. So if I were hitting the exact same serve with both of these paddles, I'd be getting more power with this one. So the paddle you choose does give you more power. Usually, rule of thumb, thinner paddles give you more power than thicker paddles. But just know you shouldn't go with the smallest paddle possible to get more power, because when you get power, you sacrifice control. But as you know, for most shots of pickleball, control is usually better than power.
One of the fastest ways to improve your serve is actually just to be more consistent with your routine for the serve. So what I mean by that is my routine would include first grabbing the ball, bouncing on my paddle 2 times, getting low, facing my left shoulder where it needs to go, and then serving the ball. Your routine might look a little bit different, but find something consistent that you can do before every single point so you can diagnose problems and be more consistent with every shot. If I'm comparing 2 radically different routines to diagnose what's going on with my serve, it's going to be a lot harder than if I have a consistent routine, which eliminates a lot of the variables between your serves. Another major point I have to stress here is do your routine after you call the score, before each point. The reason you do that is because a lot of times we're going to call the score wrong, and that's going to throw us off. So we want to make sure we do our routine after we call the serve, so if we do think something is thrown off, we can restart that routine each time.
Okay, when you're starting out, having a consistent routine is really, really important. And part of that routine is probably going to be where you're standing on the court. So a lot of the times you want to stand on the left side of the court, so the most balls that come back to you come back to your forehand because it's probably stronger. But as you get better at pickleball, you can start kind of varying where you're standing. So even though my routine's the consistent, instead of standing right here, I might want to stand on the far corner of the court, and this just opens up more angles. So now there's more distance from me to the short corner, and I can hit that serve more effectively. Same thing if I wanted to serve closer to this middle line, standing right here would put the ball on the middle line a lot faster than standing anywhere else here. Also, this will get into some mind games that we'll talk about later in this video that you can use to mess with your opponents.
When you are serving, there's kind of 3 big targets that you want to aim for with almost every single serve. I call them the 3 Bs. We've got the body, the backhand, and the between, really the in-between. I'll show you what I mean here. The body makes a lot of sense because it forces jams. So let's say I hit a serve here and it goes right into Shay's chest. He's forced to make a compact shot that's awkward, and the consistency is going to go down a lot with that shot. The next really important spot is a backhand. In general, most players struggle to hit backhands as opposed to forehands, so we definitely want to target that when possible. So as an example, we're going to serve out wide here. The ball's going to go all the way to Shay's backhand. Now he's forced to hit a shot he's less comfortable with, which means we get an easier return that allows us to move into the kitchen. And a little bit more of a specific shot, if he can target it, is the between. So we've got the backhand, we've got the body. Right in between is Shay's left foot. The reason we like this target right here is because it forces Shea to make a decision. Is he gonna take it with his backhand or is he gonna take it with his forehand? Either way, he's gotta move to make that shot happen. Most players will opt for their forehand, so when we hit here, Shea would choose to move to run around. But the problem is that takes away time for Shea to hit a good return, which means we often get either errors or bad returns as a result.
Here's a really simple thing you can do to make your opponent's life a lot more difficult. So you're probably used to only hitting topspin serves because that's what you are most comfortable with. However, what you should be trying is different spins on your serves to find out what your opponent is most uncomfortable with. So instead of just hitting regular topspin serves all the time, perhaps it would be beneficial to hit some backspin serves and see if they can handle backspin well. If they do, maybe you do a drop serve, throw some side spin on it. If they handle that well, maybe do another drop serve with massive slice or even a lob that throws them off with their timing. Either way, the things that you learn from serving with different spins will identify your opponent's weaknesses in other areas of their game. Okay, now we're getting into the pro level mind game strategies. Here's the first one. Earlier, I told you to change where on the baseline you're serving. Here's a great reason why. So let's say you walk over here to this corner of the court. A lot of times your opponents are going to think that you're serving out wide or maybe to the short corner. That's a perfect opportunity for you to serve down the middle. So if you see your opponents responding to how you position yourself on the court, all you have to do is just serve to a place where they're not expecting it, and usually you can get an error or some sort of pop-up. Here's another really simple mind game you can do. Just change the cadence of your serve. So from the time you call the score to the time you serve, you have 10 seconds. And more importantly, your opponents are not allowed to stop play once you've called the score unless there's like a hindrance or something. So you can do this. Call the score, sit here, your opponents are probably down and ready, and then just wait and just see what happens. And the second you see them move, then you serve. Now they're off balance and you probably just cause an error or a pop-up or something you can take advantage of.
Another great way to play mind games with your opponents is through tempo. Pickleball is a game of momentum. When you're winning points, you want to be moving fast and upping your tempo to keep that hype going. But when you're losing some points, it might make sense to slow that tempo down and force your opponents to slow down their pace as well and get off of their rhythm. Another great time to change up the tempo is after a really long, exhausting rally. Let's say your opponents are super worn out after an intense rally. That's a great time to serve almost immediately and force them to keep going and stretch to their limits. And on top of that, we mentioned that between serve earlier that makes them move. That's a great scenario to implement it because they're gonna have to move to hit that serve, and I'm willing to bet that they won't want to.
You might think this is insane, but I promise it'll work. Whenever there's a big gust of wind, you actually want to serve. Here's a problem I see people making all the time. They'll wait for that wind to pass, then it's completely calm conditions, and they'll serve. Likely it's because they don't feel confident in their serve, but this also means that their opponent has a chance to hit a ball in flat conditions. Instead, remember this. The serve is the only shot in pickleball that you have 100% control over. It's really easy, even in windy conditions, to drop the ball out of your hand and serve reliably into the middle of the court. What's not easy is being the returner and trying to defend a ball that's moving really chaotically from the wind. So if you feel a big gust of wind, probably a good time to serve.
Another really smart mind game that's incredibly easy to implement is lob serves at a high pressure moment. So let's say it's match point and your opponent has all the pressure in the world to make his return in. That's a great time to hit a lob serve because it forces them to add all the pace to the ball, which is going to make them panic and potentially cause an error.
Here are 2 super advanced tips for your serve whenever your opponents are stacking. Just so you know, stacking is when your opponents are switched from the usual positions to get someone with a stronger forehand in the middle, or maybe to take advantage of some other matchup. But the important part is, when your opponents are stacking, it's very likely that they're going to switch after they hit the return. So we can take advantage of that. If you have some sort of gut feeling that your opponents are going to switch, or maybe you picked up a sign, you always want to serve super far out wide and make your opponents go out wide to return the serve. This is going to make them a lot slower coming back into the court, and there might be some miscommunication there as to if they should continue switching or just resume their normal positions. And if they don't make that distinction or that communication, then likely you're going to win the point. I kind of hinted at it there, but this same concept applies for any serve. If your opponent is lined up in the middle of the court, more than likely they want to return a ball and move into the court. But if you serve a ball out wide, they'll have to step out wide to return it and then move into the court after that return. This causes change of direction, which makes them a lot slower approaching the net. Super advantageous in singles, which we'll talk about in a second. A couple of single strategies versus double serving strategies. In singles, things are a little bit different. Number one, where you serve from matters a little bit more. So you probably don't want to serve from the corners in singles because you're going to have to cover the entirety of the court. It's much safer to serve more from the middle of the court. That way, after the return, you can just kind of hang out here and play whatever ball is given to you. The second thing is you want to go for your serve a lot harder in singles. In singles, there's a lot more emphasis put on the returns. And so if the returns are not really excellent, then you can pass them on a third shot. In doubles, this isn't necessarily the case. Poor return doesn't often just end up in an outright winner. So in singles, even if you happen to miss some a little bit long, you really want to be aiming for this back third, back quarter of the court with your serves. Additionally, in singles, it's really important that you serve in such a way that your opponent's momentum is going away from the middle of the court. So if they're lined up to return here, I wouldn't want to serve towards their backhand because that's going to allow them to move forward into the court with their return, making my third a lot more difficult. Instead, you probably want to serve out wide to their forehand, so they have to step wide to return, and now you have the entirety of the court open to hit your third shot.
We just took your serve to the pro level with 20 tips. Go ahead and follow our newsletter so you don't miss out on more tips on a regular basis. And if you want even more content, maybe watch this video. It's so good. It's gonna make you so much better so easily.